So last Saturday, following Torah study, there were about 10 of us that sat outside and enjoyed the wonders of nature. And I told this story that I thought was just a throwaway story, that we were just sitting around. I told the story, but I loved it so much, and it really made me think about the point of the story and ultimately how it reflected not only my life, but ultimately how it can ultimately inspire all of our lives. And the story goes that a man who had given up on his own life, didn't want to be doing what he was doing anymore, found no joy in his work, no joy in his family, no joy in his community, prays to God and says, God, show me paradise. And God asked him, says, are you sure that's what you want? The man replied, I am sure with all my heart, show me paradise. Very well. So it happened that paradise was not so far from his village. It was just a few days' journey. And so the man set out that early morning, or the morning that it was, and he sets out on his journey. And as he comes to need to take a rest, take a nap, he takes off his shoes, puts his shoes next to him, and puts the shoes in a way before iPhones and compasses. He puts his shoes in a way to tell him exactly which way to go towards paradise. And sometime in the middle of the night, unbeknownst to him, the shoes are turned around. Okay? So he wakes up, excited, exhilarated, ready to meet paradise and what paradise is going to represent. And he puts on his shoes and walks towards where paradise will ultimately be. And so by noon, this next morning, he starts to see a village. And he sees within the village, or as he sees this village, he says, I see paradise. It's kind of like seeing land after being in the sea for some time, right? And he starts to run full speed to go to paradise. And he looks around and he says, what a beautiful place this is. My village was always so crowded, so noisy. This place is a lot different, so filled with life and joy. And he sat down on a bench in the middle of the town square, and he watched the life of the village happen before him. He saw children singing in the square. He felt the vitality, the love, the energy that was existing all around this square with this fountain. And in the evening, he heard the joyful sounds of families reunited at home and smelled the meals that were being enjoyed by each family. It's been a long day, and so he finally was feeling a little bit hungry. And he thought, well, since paradise looks so much like my village, I wonder if there is a street in paradise like my own street. And so he went, took a walk. He found it. And as he finds his street, he wonders, well, if there's a street like my street in paradise, maybe there's a house like my house in paradise. So he goes down the street. What do you know? Finds a house that's exactly like his house. And as he's marveled by this seeming coincidence, a woman opens the door who looks a lot like his wife, calls this man's name, and says, come in for dinner. He's blown away. His heart leaps for joy. They know me in paradise. There's a plate just for him to eat in paradise. A woman looks at him and says, I don't know what you're talking about in paradise. But go sit down, your soup's getting cold. So he enters the house. And this house in paradise was nothing like his house before. The house was always crowded. It always seemed cluttered. It always felt filled with commotion and noise. But this place was cozy. It was homey, and it was full of life. And he sat down and ate this soup, and it was the best meal he'd ever had before. And he complimented the woman on such a wonderful soup. And afterward, he went up to his bedroom and entered the most deep sleep he could have possibly had. And in the morning, the woman who looked like his wife handed him his tools to go out to work. The man was a little perplexed. Why am I working in paradise? But it occurred to him that even in paradise, there were tasks that needed to be done. And he found as he went to work that day that the work he was doing was different than the work he did before. He didn't feel it was tedious and mundane. It filled him with a sense of purpose. And that night, after this long day of work, but he didn't seem to think it was that long, he returned to that same warm, loving home, that same kind woman, and to more of that wonderful soup. And in all the years that followed, no one could ever convince the man that that wasn't paradise. And every one of his days from that day on was filled with more wonder, more purpose, more joy, and more life than ever before. Now, I was reflecting on the story this past week. And the question that came to my mind is, what is paradise? Right? Sometimes think of it beyond what we have right now. Right? So is it something that we are reaching for but never can quite attain? Or is it something right in front of us, which we are unable to see? Experiencing paradise that I believe this story represents is built upon a mindset rather than a place. And when we are willing to shift our attitudes and our beliefs to reflect the joyfulness, the gratitude, or the gratefulness and the appreciation in life, we can ultimately find paradise and we can ultimately flourish. Now, does this mean that paradise is without sadness, suffering, or challenges? Absolutely not. Our existence, our humanity, forces us to confront loss when loss happens. It challenges us to come face to face with hardship and torments us with despair regarding our own situations and others' experience. Yet finding paradise is not always about being happy, but rather fully acknowledging our emotions in order to allow us to have self-compassion and to ensure our self-care. Now, this week we read from the Torah portion and more, a continuation of the holiness code from last week. Now, the word for holiness in our text is kiddushim, which typically signifies separated or consecrated. Yet words rooted in kiddushim are words like kiddush, the blessing over the wine we just said together, which can be said when we're with others, maybe having a Shabbat meal at our house, or right here in the community together at temple. Kiddushim is also the root of kiddusha, which we sang, or actually we didn't sing, but we said tonight. It's found in our Amidah prayer and has to be said when at least 10 people are together. And the Kaddish, which we're about to express, our morning rite, which when said connects us to our loved ones, but most certainly heals us because we are together with each other. In each of these holy moments, marked by the words of holiness, kiddushim, kiddush, kiddusha, kaddish, rather than a time of separateness from our world, is actually a time to connect with our world. And when we connect with our world, our emotions, and each other, we not only find holiness, but in some small way, paradise. Now, a few days ago, I received this rock that I now carry in my pocket. And on it is the simple word gratitude. And every so often, when I reach into my pocket to get my phone, when I haven't lost it, my keys, or my wallet, I feel that rock in my pocket, and I'm reminded to be grateful for something. Right now, I'm grateful for this moment with you. So as we are about to conclude this service and go on our ways, I encourage you to take an inventory of things that connect you to something beyond yourself. Find your rock, and in that, may you find the holiness that connects you to something much greater because it links you to paradise.